Hello and welcome back to the Sky Fantasy Football Podcast by Fantasy Football Hub. My name is Andrew and I am joined by former winner Dan Cox. Dan, how was your week?
Hello, mate. How are you? Yeah, I had a pretty good week, really. I got back up into the top 500, so I was pretty pleased. Yourself?
I didn't have Henderson, sadly, so I got like a smallish rise off my 5 Liverpool players, but a clean sheet would have been nice, and maybe my captain Salah getting something. I didn't watch it, but apparently could have had a hat-trick, which was quite frustrating. And obviously Mane going off as well was particularly frustrating, especially with PL, but especially for those who brought him in specifically for this week. Have you got Mane, Dan?
So I had Vardy. I've been struggling with him for the last few weeks as he's not played and just done nothing and missing penalties and all sorts. So when he got his sort of bit of an injury, I did think he might be back for the last game before the overhaul, but because I was a bit annoyed with him, I thought, well, I'm just going to get rid of him. I thought I had Salah, so I thought, well, I'll whip him straight out for Mane and happy days. Yeah. I couldn't afford Mane. So I really debated whether just leaving Vardy in and just keeping him for the Chelsea game. I thought he would be back. I thought, do you know what, I'll go for Firmino. So the only reason I didn't have Mane was because I couldn't afford him. And like sometimes that's the luck you get.
Oh, that is a piss sporny, Dan. Flipping.
He's now looking at. I don't think he'll be back before the overhaul. So
no,
I've got a bit of luck there. Like that's what could you do? I was thinking about making another move, and I would have got in Henderson. And I think I would have brought in Robertson, but I thought I can't waste 3 transfers.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
So I just brought in Firmino, and that's the luck. He scored. I thought I'm going to get 6 points from 3 games, but he scored 10 points, and I'm happy with that. Even if he doesn't do anything in the next 2, I'll be happy with that. So yeah, that is the luck. You just couldn't afford Mane. Went for Firmino, and jobs are good.
And obviously now you've got him for the next 2. Whereas if anyone else wants to have him in, they'll have to have another sub to move off Mane for him. So again, advantage you. So well done, mate. It's a little bit of luck, but your aggressive play, you deserve your luck. Okay, so for today's podcast, then we're going to look back at the feedback that we had for the game change ideas last week that we put out to the Sky community. And then we will start looking at overhaul planning. So we will look at the March fixtures that have been released and what this means for Sky managers and early overhaul plans, essential overhaul pick and who we are eyeing up as potential differentials, overhaul strategies for those at different ranks. So Dan is in the top 500. I'm in the top 5,000 just. So our strategies will likely be very different. So we'll talk about those. We will talk about our transfer and captain plans for next game week. We will answer community questions and we will have a quick look at the top of the Hub second half league. So firstly then, looking back at the feedback for the game change ideas we talked about last week. Dan, so the 3 main ideas we talked about were multi-captains, scrapping man of the match and potentially having vice-captains. What was the feedback you had back of that?
So I was in 2 minds about the anytime captain. I could see how that could be of benefit. Like I say, if you want someone like Aguero, but you're always unsure whether he's going to start, that's always a bit of a concern. But then I get if you got him and captained him, then if he scores a hat-trick, you deserve that reward for, taking the risk. But that didn't go down well at all, mate. Everyone hated that. I don't think anyone said that was a good idea. But no, everyone hated it. And I suppose it is right. Like you can set your team by the first kick-off of the day, and then you can go out with your missus and kids and forget about it. But if it was, if you could then do it at 3:00, 5:30, I suppose that's more sort of distraction, keeping you on your phone when you should not be on your phone. So it didn't go down very well, and I've sort of changed my mind really now. I think it is good to leave it as the first kick-off, but I don't make the decisions, so they probably will send out a survey at the end of the season on the app and via email. So if you want to keep it how it is, you do need to take them surveys and give them your feedback that you like it how it is and don't change it. So, didn't go down well at all, the anytime captain.
And what about man of the match?
Quite a lot of people are in favour of scrapping that. Again, I've been on the receiving end of man of the matches when they just weren't man of the match. And then, it swings and roundabouts, but a lot of people are in favour of scrapping it. Traore got man of the match again. He was quite good actually in that game, but he got like his 7th man of the match. Yeah. I'm sure the criteria for him, I don't know, is whoever's reporting on it, is Traore starting? Yes, man of the match. Yeah. Yes, I think that's all it is really. But a lot of people said they're quite happy to scrap the man of the match. But there's a few, so they quite enjoy it, and if you're watching a live game, it adds to the excitement in the last sort of 3 or 4 minutes when it's like, yes, he's man of the match, and that's another 6 points if he's your captain. So, yeah, they were the main two, really. I didn't get many other suggestions on changes they'd like to see in the game, but that was just the feedback we had for those ones.
And in terms then of the fixtures that came out for March, obviously they came out, I think it was Thursday, and first impressions for me, Dan, I'm not sure about you, but they seem to be fairly easy to navigate, I would say. So I quickly worked out that if you had a Liverpool player, a Man City player, a Leicester player, and either a West Ham or a Tottenham player, then you could navigate through every game in March. What are your early thoughts?
Yes, so I as soon as they came out, have a look day by day. Pretty much. The two that stand out to me as unappealing. Well, there's probably 3 days. The first day, I'm not really sold on. Like with the winter break, there's Palace, Everton, Brighton, Watford. Really, that doesn't really stand out to me too much. Manchester United, Chelsea. Again, if Rashford's not playing, there's no one I'm really, really thinking, yes, I really want him in the team long term, or then do you want to spend a transfer to bring him in for one game? And then the West Ham Tottenham game, again, I'm not really inspired to have a player from those teams in my team. And do I want to use a transfer to bring him in for one game when it could be a 4-point captain? So they were the main ones. But like you say, as long as you've got Liverpool, Man City, you're pretty much set, really.
So you mentioned the first game after the overhaul. We had a question off Jake. Is anyone thinking of going without a player on the 8th of February? How about yourself, Dan? Have you had to think about this yet?
Yeah, of course. I think I will have a player, and I think I'll have Richarlison. They're home to Palace. So I'm pretty sure in saying that's the first game of the day, I think.
Yes,
so check he's starting and have him in. So I think I'll have Richarlison. If he scores and as a 20-point captain, that's already 20 points you lost on the first day. So I think I will have him, but then Everton play Arsenal and United, Chelsea after that. So I might lose him pretty sharpish, and it is a transfer used. But I do like to have a captain each day. But with those 3 days we talked about, I wouldn't want to not have a captain for all 3 of them. I think one of them you could swerve, or but definitely all 3 is very risky.
I think for me, so I'm not really keen on the fixtures. I'm not keen on Richarlison, but only because, as you said, it's a transfer out immediately, and Palace are quite good at the back. I'm tempted by Calvert-Lewin. I think he's 8.3 million, but I'm only tempted to have him because obviously, he is on form and he's playing well, but he's also a cheap enabler as a third striker going forward over the next month or so then as well. I think if he wasn't at that price, I probably wouldn't look, because I do think that all the games are going to be tight. I was looking at him anyway, regardless, of that fixture. So that would be the only reason. But I do think this is where the different strategies come into play. So when I go into the overhaul, I'll probably only have like 10 or 11 transfers. You've got a few more. This is maybe where the overhaul strategies come into play, that those who have kept some left can probably afford to take a punt on days like that and shift them on, whereas those who've got less, like myself, probably haven't got that luxury anymore. We've kind of wasted them or not earlier on in the season. So I think this is where the strategy side starts to come into it. But I'm looking at Calvert-Lewin, but only because of his price and only because I'll look to keep him in for quite a while, because, you say Arsenal, Man United, but their defences are not very good at the moment, and I'd fancy Everton to score against them both, in all honesty. So yeah, I think that's our answer. So you're going with Richarlison with a view to move him on. I'll probably look at Calvert-Lewin, but just for the value that he'll offer maybe over the next month, I think.
Yeah, them Everton games though. I pretty much only just looked at the Palace game because I thought, well, I'll have Richarlison and move him straight out. But Arsenal, Man U, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Norwich, if that's not 5 defeats, do you know what I mean? That's terrible, isn't it? But yeah, Calvert-Lewin he's quite cheap, isn't he? And I wouldn't want to lose a striker spot to a striker with those games coming up. But
maybe next week when we're discussing our actual overhaul side and we're looking at budgets, and we see that we've got 8.3 million left for a striker, and we're like, Calvert-Lewin. But
he might, like you say, he might score against Arsenal and United. You never know. He is a good value for money pick, and he has been on good form, so he could do. I wouldn't put anyone off him, but God, there's some bad games, aren't there?
I think in terms of an answer there, should we have a player for that? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I think if someone didn't have a player, I don't think it's the end of the world because there's no massive advantages after. I think what we're talking about, Dan. Even if you're going for Richarlison, you're on about shifting him on again, aren't you? So I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer there. Is there?
No, you could skip the whole day, and Richarlison could be a 4-point captain. Calvert-Lewin could, or Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison could be a 20-point captain. It is all however people see it, sort of thing. Like I do fancy Everton to do all right against Palace, and so I'm hoping for a good sort of 10 or 12 points. But yeah, it could be nothing. I just know in the past, don't know if you can remember last season, like Anderson, West Ham had a random Monday night game and I skipped it. I did think about bringing in Anderson, but I didn't. And he was like a 30-point captain. He got a couple of goals and man of the match. And it's like, God.
I captained him that day.
Yeah. Well,
I did,
No, I didn't have him. And then I remember Pogba, he was the same, single game day. He brought, he was a 24-point captain for about 2 games in a row and I skipped him. And you're like, So, I like say with the Mane move, it's just your luck. If your luck's in, it's in. If it isn't, it isn't. But you could skip it. You could have someone, I don't know what I'm trying to say to people, really. It's just how you risk it. And if you're lucky, you're lucky. But Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin or skip, either or really, just be lucky.
The only other observation I have from those March games, you mentioned it. So Sunday the 15th, have Wolves, West Ham, Tottenham and Man United play. And then Spurs and West Ham play each other 5 days later. So in terms of getting players for those 2 games, you could on the 15th get in a Tottenham or West Ham player. You would assume it'd be a Spurs player, obviously, or maybe West Ham, if they've turned a corner. But on that 15th looks ripe to bring in a Spurs player to cover the captaincy on the 20th. But of course, at that time, we will also know the April fixtures as well. So it could be, if West Ham, for example, on the 1st of April, or whenever they're back, have a single game day on the Sunday, you may want to look at a West Ham player because it covers the extra day as well. So I think March the 15th, it's a long way away, both in terms of the teams themselves, the players, the fitness of players, form, but also the April fixtures. But that looks to me to be the only kind of difficult point in March where we really need to make a decision on a player, I think.
Yeah, and like you say, because that game is a Sunday, you've got a Manchester City or a Leicester player. They play on the 14th, the Saturday. Whip them out for a Spurs player. You've got 2 games before Man City or Leicester play again. So that's when everyone asks about the 2 for 0s and stuff like that. There's one there. You can cover a captain, bring a player in for 2 games. Well, 3 effectively because one's as captain. Yeah, so that's a good... It does work well that it's like that. It's not like you have to bring a Spurs player in and you don't gain an extra game. You can gain 3 games effectively. So... yeah, good little moves. Pity the first games against Manchester United, but West Ham at home, good fixture.
Just for those who can't see Dan, I love how Dan works. He's got his piece of paper held up in front of him with all his grids and his his pen and pencil and his rubber and everything else. It's all handwritten. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I absolutely love it.
As soon as the fixtures came out on Friday, mate, I was straight in at work with the old grids, pen, ruler. Fixtures going. I use Ian Parent, of course, but Ian does have a job and stuff, so it does take him a couple of days to get it up, and I want it there and then. So I've done all my work Friday morning, so I knew the fixtures would be out about lunchtime, and then Friday afternoon get that typed up before I don't get a chance all weekend because I'm looking after the kids. So that is that, and that is what I'll be looking at work all week.
Love it. Okay, so in terms of essential overhaul picks then, Dan, just looking at the fixture ticker, it's interesting actually. So this is the Hub fixture ticker, and from game week 26 in terms through to game week 32, so roughly, six game weeks, in terms of who's got the best fixtures, team who come out top are Southampton. So they've got Burnley, Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, Norwich, Arsenal and Watford. So a really nice run for Southampton. Then it's Wolves. So they've got Leicester, Norwich, Spurs, Brighton, West Ham, Bournemouth and Villa. Then it's Sheffield United. Then it's Arsenal. Then it's Newcastle. Then it's Liverpool. So in terms of essential players who we're looking at for the overhaul, who have you got your eye on as no matter what, you're having them in 100%?
So if we go by that question we got, so a player for each position?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
It's a bit boring, but... I think I have had Henderson, but I think I'm just going to stretch and have Alisson in. Van Dijk, De Bruyne, and again, Mane. I know it is boring, and that is the obvious ones, but they're obvious for reasons. So
Well, they're essential. That's the reason why. What about
Yeah.
these Juventus rumours for Van Dijk? They broke this afternoon on Twitter off a source who 100% correct insider knowledge on everything. So he's the guy who said that, Rashford had done his back and he was out for the season. He's the one who does the early lineups. Could this potentially affect his playing time? I can't see it personally because they're just going to want to win the league, But you got any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad that. Be mad for next season if you've not got Van Dijk, one of the main, your first pick, I think. So
Yeah.
Be pretty mad if he's not there. But I saw that guy tweet that out because he did with the Rashford. I know he's got the team news, so he's obviously in the media or something because they put the team sheets in an hour and a half, don't they, before the game? So the media get him and stuff. So he's obviously something like that. But yeah, when he had a Rashford one and then this today, and I don't know, if that turns out to be true, that is pretty mad. But I suppose if you've got a Champions League, Premier League, cigar time, I'll go to an Italian league, put my feet up, and it's mad. But yeah, he'll still be in my overhaul team. That won't bother me.
So my essential picks were the same. So I had Alisson, Henderson, then I had Van Dijk, De Bruyne, and I had Mane. So I suppose nothing very exciting, both in terms of the picks themselves or the fact that we basically had the exact same players, but they are essential, for their value, even with their price. They're all quite highly priced in the game. They're just essential. They're just scoring machines. So and they cover a lot of captaincies off as well. So yeah, so not very exciting, but they are essential in terms of differentials. So I've looked at maybe a few players. So these could be players, and they might be players I'm looking at actually. So we'll come to our overhaul strategies in a little bit, but I'm chasing a little bit. So I'm currently around 5k, hoping to be a bit higher than that come the overhaul because I've got a lot of Liverpool players, but I'm certainly looking for cheap players, differentials who could potentially make the difference, and score some sneaky points here and there that are not expected. So in goal, I've got Dubravka. So a bit of a strange one maybe, but he's actually the third highest scoring keeper in the game, which I was very surprised at when I saw that. And he's 6.7 million. And in terms of Newcastle's fixtures, they have a really good run now, right from the overhaul actually, until the end of the season. They're actually fourth overall for fixtures from game week 26 to game week 37. Their last game is Liverpool in game week 38. But before that, they've got the fourth best fixtures, and they've got a really good run from game week 28 to game week 33, where they got Burnley, Southampton, Sheffield United, Villa, Bournemouth and West Ham. So Newcastle they're starting to tighten up a little bit. They will be concerned about relegation, and because of that, I think we'll start to see a few more clean sheets from these sorts of teams. So 6.7 million. He's no Henderson, obviously, but if someone is looking for something a bit different, he could potentially be a good pick. In defence, I've gone for Stevens. So he's 7.2 million. He's probably a bit expensive, but he's got 3 assists in the season. He's also got a goal. He's very aggressive off corners, I find. He's been close to scoring a few more as well. And again, looking at the fixtures, so Southampton's fixtures from game week 26 to game week 32, they're actually top of all teams in the Premier League. So they've got Burnley, Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, Norwich, Arsenal and Watford. So Southampton have got some really nice fixtures, and potentially he could be a good one again at the back. In midfield, I really like this player, and it's Fleck. So he's 7 million. He's very, very cheap. So Sheffield United's fixtures, so from game week 26 to game week 34, they've got the second best fixtures. So they've got Bournemouth, Brighton, Villa, Norwich, Newcastle United, Tottenham, Burnley and Wolves. Fleck, again, very surprisingly, has actually got 5 Man of the Match awards, which I was surprised at. And he's only 7 million. So, when we're talking about getting in potentially Alisson, Van Dijk, De Bruyne, Mane, maybe players like Aguero and all this, you're going to need these really, really cheap guys. So he looks to me like a really good pick. And up front, so I've gone for Ings. Not very exciting, but I don't expect him to be massively owned because everyone will be looking at the captain picks. But again, his fixtures, I mentioned him with Stevens, but his next 6 things, we've got Burnley, Villa, West Ham, Newcastle, Norwich and Arsenal. There's 6 really, really good fixtures, and Ings is cheap as well. So he could maybe take the place of my Calvert-Lewin pick I mentioned earlier. Shout out for Jimenez as well, because they're on fire, Wolves, and they've got a really nice run of fixtures as well. So they've got the best set of fixtures from game week 26 to game week 34. Leicester, Norwich, Tottenham, okay, and then they've got Brighton, West Ham, Bournemouth, Villa, Arsenal, and Sheffield United. So they've got the best fixtures. Jimenez, really good player. He's quite expensive, maybe at 10.6, but if you fancy him to keep on score, he just seems to score or assist every single game. So again, in terms of a differential potentially over someone else, if you had Ings, Jimenez, and Mane up front, when you're going up against maybe Mane, and Aguero and someone else, Aguero's dropped or whatever, and Ings and Jimenez do the business, you could be quids in there. So they're the differentials. Okay, so talking now about overhaul strategies for those at different ranks, and this is obviously quite topical as Dan he's probably not as high as wanted to be, and he's not as high as been in the past, but he's about 500th. I'm 5,000th, which is probably my worst rank at this stage for a few years. So Dan, in terms of your strategy and your thinking in terms of players at the overhaul, what kind of players are you going to be looking for?
I'm 498th. I'm only about 50 points off the top 100, which is what I want to get to. I really want to win it, but it's not going to happen. But I can, in my position with 14 transfers, I can basically pick the obvious players. Yeah. And, I don't need to really make any differential moves. I think the transfers I have, and I know we'll probably look at them later, like the transfer counts remaining, I've got more transfers on average than most. So I know that just by picking a solid side with players I want, and by making moves, I can make the points up to get to the top 100. So that's what I'll be doing. Whereas, if you're a bit further down, you might feel the need to make some differential moves to rapidly climb the leaderboard. So, I'm going to basically play it safe and stick to what I've been doing, really. Like, it's a long haul sort of thing for me, rather than people that are blasted a load of transfers early. I'll pace myself and just keep plugging away, and I'm quite confident I'll be top 100 by the end of the season going on the transfer counts. So that's where I'm at, really.
Cool. So for everyone who's in the top 1,000, who've got roughly the same amount of transfers as Dan, which looking on Twitter and in our WhatsApp hub chat and stuff, there are quite a few players who are in that position and doing better as well. Actually, Dan's advice is to play it safe and utilize those extra transfers you'll actually have over others to get in the top 100. In terms of myself, so I'm 5,000, I think, as I say, hoping to climb a bit more before the overhaul, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to have to go a little bit rogue, I think, and some of the ideas I've had about going a bit rogue if you're chasing, obviously this could go one of two ways, so you have to bear that in mind. So I could just as easily finish 10,000 or 20,000 now as I could finish, in the top 100 or 500 just by doing things a bit differently. So the first thing I may do, as I mentioned earlier, I may just leave the first game to save a transfer. Okay, I may be kind of slightly off the pace. Hopefully nothing much happens. I only lose out of 5 or 10 points. People will be using a transfer there. So, if Dan brings in Richarlison does nothing, for example, he will then be using a transfer to have to get him out. Another thing, and this is one I'm toying with doing and probably end up doing, is all my eggs in one basket from a defensive view. So I look at the Sheffield United players, the Southampton players as well, potentially, but it's going for a cheaper defensive block on one of those teams. You expect Liverpool will keep on keeping loads of clean sheets, but we expected that at the start of the season, and they only kept, was it something like 2 in 19 or something stupid like that, whereas it will only take Liverpool to concede in 1 or 2 games, and Sheffield United to keep a clean sheet in 1 or 2, where that could potentially be swings, of like 30 or 40 points. So I'm definitely looking at that. I'm also looking at players like, as I mentioned, Ings, Jimenez, potentially Fleck, who I think will be much lower owned players as well, rather than going for the the standard Van Dijk, De Bruyne, Aguero, Mane potentially. And the other option I've thought of as well is going for the second best pick from each team. So last year, this is interesting actually because it worked last year. So I talked about this last year with Mark Edworthy at the overhaul last year, and Salah at the time was absolutely flying. And we talked about at the time, instead of going for Salah, go for Mane, because at the time Mane was like the number 2. So it's looking at things like that. So instead of going for, just for example, Salah or Mane, going for Firmino, instead of going for Aguero, going for Jesus, instead of going for De Bruyne, going for Mahrez, it may not work. But if you're looking to chase down rank and not just peter out, I don't care if I finish 5,000th or 1,000th or 10,000th, right? So I'd like to be, in terms of my leagues, my captain overall rank, I only really want to be in the top few hundred. I'm not going to get in the top few hundred now by playing the same as everyone else. So hopefully they're just a few ideas. So it's leaving alone match days that maybe haven't got potential upside to save your transfers. It's potentially looking at defensive blocks from teams basically aren't Liverpool, and looking at the second best pick from each team as well. So they're potential things which I'm looking at. We will talk more next week, as next week we're going to actually pick our draft overhaul teams live, but they're things to think about. So with those in mind then, Dan, what are your transfer and captain plans for next game week? Nothing very exciting, I assume, but what are your plans?
So my captains for this week, so I'll be on Salah for the West Ham Liverpool on the Wednesday. On Saturday the 1st, I'll be Salah again against Southampton. Well, I could even go Firmino in either of them. I'll see how it goes. And then on Sunday, just De Bruyne. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just, keeping people at arm's length, trying to stay in the top 500.
I'm the same. So I'm Salah Wednesday, likely Salah on Saturday, and De Bruyne on Sunday. One thing which may be an idea for those who are chasing. So Man City are away to Spurs on Sunday. You would expect De Bruyne to score a few points, but Aubameyang will be back for Arsenal, and they're playing Burnley, I believe, was it the last game of last season or the last but one game he was away to Burnley? I'm sure he scored 2 in that game. Yeah. So maybe he could be a really good shout for those who have got transfers to Burner looking to steal a match. Obviously if he scores a brace in that game, you'll be quids in for points. So just something to think about there. So again, nothing very exciting pre-overhaul, as Dan has said, over the last kind of month or so. We're pretty much on lockdown. But do
you want to know a fact? Actually,
what's that?
The Simon Ward won it last year.
Yeah,
and the guy who came second, Andy Moores, I think he was the only one. He had Aubameyang, and on the last day, I worked it out. He captained Laporte. If it had captained Aubameyang, he'd have won the whole thing. But he captained Laporte because everyone was going on about defenders, and I'm pretty sure that's what he did.
That's like a 45 grand swing, is it, from first to second or something?
That's how close it is.
Christ. Okay, on to questions then. So thank you, Dan, for asking the community for questions. We probably, hopefully, answered a few of these, actually. So first, a question from Heskebo. Could you give a high-level overview of what your process is for choosing an overhaul team? So I think, Dan, you've more or less answered that. And with Heskebo obviously being in the position he's in, which is very high up, I believe he's still in the top 100. Any specific advice for him in there, Dan, apart from, make the obvious picks?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got a good transfer count. He can pick the obvious side. It's very hard. What he thinks, just pick the side he wants. He doesn't have to be taking risks. He's not that far off the top. A couple of captain picks away from, being up there. But yeah, just check the fixtures for the players he wants. You could go for the obvious picks to keep people at arm's length. The ownership, I'd always sort of check the ownership of people. People say about swords and shields and stuff. On that Sunday, Man City, De Bruyne is most likely going to be the most selected and most obvious captain, so you could go for him. I don't know. It is so hard to answer in his position. When I won it, we didn't have the overhaul, so I didn't have all this. My God, I've got to pick a new team now to the end. But he knows what he's doing. He's where he is for a reason. He's just got to keep going as he is, and that is so hard. He said he wanted a high level response, so I'll try my best. But it's so hard. The player, just go by each day. The captain you think you want, you got to have the luck. Sometimes your name's just not on the cup. But
I think as well, the only thing I would add in there, if you want to have a shot at potentially winning the whole thing, I do think you may have to potentially look at a couple of rogue captain shout ones, and maybe we'll look at this more next week when we actually pick, our overhaul teams. But last year I got up to about 17th in April. I went with the safe options. I gradually just kind of stayed where I was and went further down. Whereas I look back now and think that if I'd have just gone for a couple of rogue captain options, I potentially could have moved on, and moved up a bit more rather than just going with the herd. But that's in terms of actually looking to win the whole thing. But as we say, he probably knows better than us this year, Dan, because he's having an incredible season. Going on to more questions then. One from FPL Corf. For those managers with 15 plus transfers remaining, how many transfers should we be aiming to keep for the last 5 game week?
I think 5. Like, I know that last week could just be carnage, couldn't it? Like, people, if people are in deep into the Champions League, or I just know a few seasons before, like United have put out the reserves when they were going to trying to win the Europa League, and I'll definitely try and keep 5, basically. Like, 1 per week is the general rule I try to stick to.
Yeah. One from Gary Precious. We'll probably look to answer this next week, I would imagine, but it's 3-pronged attack, post-overhaul, a plan for how to navigate the split game week, the individual captains, and the team you want to end up with. So I think next week when we actually, pick our overall teams, we'll be answering all those. So leave that one for now. A question from Andrew Lee. Now Laporte is back. Should we consider him in our teams, or is City a liability still? So my view on this is I think there are better picks. He's very expensive. I do think he'll improve City at the back. I think you get regular bonus for passing, but City's fixtures aren't great for a while. I don't think after the overhaul either. That's my view. Dan, any different?
I think I love Laporte. I really like him. I'm just worried about because he's had such a long layoff, but when he plays, he's getting 5 points, isn't he? Like, he's hitting tier 2 passing. He's on for 5 points. He's one of them ones where, like, on Sunday, you could captain him instead of De Bruyne, and you've got 10 points without a clean sheet. And, I really like him. It's just whether he's going to play every game now after being out for so long, and whether City will prioritise Champions League. That's the only worry. And if John Stones is playing centre-back with him, that's a worry. But I love Laporte. I think he is a good pick. There was a bit of concern just because of the length of injury.
Okay. Question from Fantasy Football Hub contributor Ollie Paul. Thoughts on the best overhaul formation? Are 3 strikers still a must, or go big at the back with TAA, VVD, Laporte, Pereira and co? What are your initial thoughts, Dan, on overhaul formation?
So I think, being where I am, I'll go 5-3-2 just to keep everyone at arm's length. If I was, like, my second team, which was my A team, is about 3,000. So in that, I think I'm going to have to go for like a 4-3-3 and just go for differentials and blast it in an all or nothing sort of thing. But if you're in a position to defend, then definitely a 5-3-2 and load up on them premium defenders. And
question from FPL Fido: is it worth doing Mane to Firmino, assuming he's ruled out for the West Ham and Saints games?
I think so. I don't think Mane's going to be back this side of the overhaul. They don't need to rush him back, so I would do it. Yes, it's annoying to bring in someone, but it is still 2 games. But that's the problem I had with Firmino. He's not, your out and out striker, is he? It's not like he's going to score a brace in each game. You might just get, like, when I brought him in for the 3 games, I'm thinking I'll be happy if he scores 2 over the 3, but more than likely he probably won't score again. But me advising someone else, I'd say, yeah, bring him in.
Or potentially moving for Aubameyang on the Sunday, maybe, for that differential captain pick potentially is another idea, because you're probably not going to cap Firmino in either of those matches, if you've got like...
No, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you could keep Mane and hope he plays in one of them, and if not, you can still make the move on Sunday and
exactly.
Aubameyang, and he's a good captain differential.
Cool. Question from FPL Weasel. Dan, you are a legend. Big fan of your work. What will your captains be for the first 5 to 6 game days of the winter break? So we'll probably answer this next week when we pick our teams. Question from KG_FPL. For those managers playing Sky FF for the first time this season, what is a realistic finish if they are ranked at 45k with 10 transfers left? Is top 10k still an outside possibility?
That's tricky. I honestly don't know. It would be a possibility. I think you'd be able to take a few risks there because your transfer count isn't the biggest.
I think if you took a few risks, and I also think, bit of plug-in for the podcast, if you listen to Dan's advice, in terms of his moves and, and transfers and captains, I believe you could. So, if you casual player and just, and playing it for the first time your own way, I'd probably say no. But I do think if you tune in every week, listen to our tips and moves and plans and stuff, I believe you could. A quick plug there for the pod. Question for Lee Williams. Will the cup affect the way you set up your team for the first 2 game weeks post-overhaul, such as half a team to play 1 game week, then half the next?
I was looking at this last night. Bear with me. So the cup, we're in round 4 now. Round 3, sorry. We've had a preliminary round. So we're basically only 4 rounds in. That goes up to round 14. Then you've got the last 16 quarterfinal, semi-final, final. I don't think you can even think about it really. I think if you're at the last 16 quarter final, then start giving it a bit of thought. But there's so many rounds. You know, you could be knocked out by a dead team in that, to be honest. There's so many rounds to go. I really wouldn't give it really any thought unless you've got a load of transfers and you're not worried about your leaderboard position and you just want to win. But that doesn't really... I've never been past about round 8. So that's not something I really consider, to be honest.
Okay, question from Glenroy163. So any ideas for the Man United-Chelsea Monday night game post-Overhaul, considering just leaving it? We'll probably, again, mention this next week, but any kind of initial thoughts down there?
Yeah, I like Glenn. He does message me on Twitter. He's a good lad. I think I might skip that, although if this Fernandes deal does happen, he might figure, but I'd have to see how I can squeeze him in. But and my initial thoughts I'm probably going to skip that game.
Yeah, okay. Question from Ashley Tung. I think we've answered already. So do you have any nailed-on players post-Overhaul? So we've answered that one. Message from FPL Foxy, swords and shields for the Overhaul. So I think we've answered the shields in terms of the swords. You know, I gave a couple earlier. They're not particularly massive swords. They're more like daggers or bread knives, I suppose. But again, next week we will look at this very specifically. Question from Kermit the Winger, Sky FF. Heavy on Liverpool after Overhaul. What are your initial thoughts, Dan? Are you going heavy on Liverpool?
Again, it depends where you are. Like, I think I will, just to keep everyone at arm's length who's behind me and try to gate crash the top 100. But honestly, like we said, it depends where you are and what you want to achieve. Like, there's no season history in Sky. For me, like, I'm 500th. If I finish 400th, that don't mean nothing to me, really. It's all sort of all or nothing.
Yeah.
I'd like to be in the top 100 because last season I finished 103rd. And I was thinking to myself, like, no one's ever questioned it. But it's one of the ones where you can say, yeah, I finished 103rd. And, like, you can't prove it, can you? I know I can take screenshots, but, like, you're not in that top 100 leaderboard. Like, where'd you finish? Oh, 101st, like, every season. Yeah. And you're, like, 50,000. So, really, it depends where you are and what you want to do. But I'll be going for the obvious picks to just fend people off and fight my way up there.
Yeah. Another question from Kermit. Is going without KDB until the 4th of April too much of a risk? The fixtures aren't great. So, touched on this a second ago. What are your thoughts on going without KDB till the 4th of April, Dan?
I think I'll have him captain 4 times, maybe. I think, I'll have KDB for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have him, you know, especially how much he's going to be owned. But, you know, that might be the play for him. It might not. Like, not saying that's the right one, but he will be picked in a lot of teams and he'll be my captain. So to not have him, I think it's a big risk.
There is your answer, Kermit. Question from Phil Speck, how to handle the mini breaks. We will touch on that next week when we pick our teams. And they are all the questions. So thank you so much for all the questions. We hope we've answered everyone's questions and we will do our best to answer any more next week around any specifics. So lastly then, a look at the Hub second half £250 league. The team up the top, Rob Pick jumped from 44th to 1st in the last week. So well done, Rob Pick. That is a hell of a jump. I can't see your team, but you've obviously done really well there. Second, Gary McGee jumped from 40th to 2nd as well. Oliver Brown jumped from 20th to 3rd. So some massive leaps by a lot of players here. 4th place, Liam Stevens. Then there's Jack Palmer, Jamie Alton and a big jump. Arwin went down from 1st to 7th. Dan Cox went down from 7th to 8th. Rob Jackson jumped up a long way, up to 9th. And then Kian McKenna, Martin Sinclair, Abdul Rahman, Pietro Santasiero, Will Thomas jumped up to 16th, Dan Sherwood 18th, I'm 19th, Luke Sanderson 21st, Paul Jones 23rd, Will Anand 28th, Andrew Lee 32nd, Guy Wilcox 34th. Some really good players in that. So that is really playing out to be a really competitive league, and I look forward to chasing that down for the rest of the season there.
So I hope everyone finds what we're talking about helpful, but I could do with a bit of people's help. I've somehow managed to find myself in charge of an under-5s football team. So if anyone does any coaching or knows anything, can someone help me out? Because I don't know what to do with these kids. And like, I don't want to be looking an idiot in front of all these parents. So if anyone knows any drills or games, like we do a couple of little games, 3 aside, and I've got 14 kids to look after. Help me out, like... Send me some little, some drills, you know, especially on Twitter, and give me some drills or some ideas or something. Just help me.
Okay, then. Thank you, Dan. Where can we find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so on Twitter, DanCox82. I like speaking to people on there. So yeah, send me a message.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. And my Twitter handle is at Fergie222. So this podcast will be on the new Fantasy Football Hub Sky and TFF YouTube channel, and also available in all major podcast libraries, including iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. If you like what you hear, please like, share, subscribe, and retweet. It all helps us get the word out, and make sure you don't miss anything. All comments and feedback are very, very welcome. Our Twitter handle is at FFH_HQ, and our Sky Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. So please follow and feel free to ask any questions at any time. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, up to stats, team reveals, and much, much more, which can be used for both Sky and FPL. Also on the website, specifically for Sky, Dan reveals his transfers, captains, and general thoughts at 1 p.m. every Friday for Hub members. Over the next week or so, he will also reveal his actual Overhaul team for Hub members too. Paul writes a brilliant weekly article on the 5 burning questions of the week, both essential reads if you are a serious Sky player. I also write my weekly multi-format diary article, which includes my Sky team, transfers, captains, progress. And next week will also include my actual Overhaul team too. Dan is very active in our Sky WhatsApp chat group, along with other great Sky players, including Mark Edworthy. And this is available to premium Hub members. If you fancy a 7-day Hub membership trial, just go onto the website and sign up. You can also give code Andrew10 for a 10% annual discount. I'm sure everyone knows, but the Planet FPL guys also do a brilliant Sky podcast every Wednesday. Make sure you tune into them. I will certainly be interested in their Overhaul thoughts over the next week or two. Last week, we did the first ever FPL Saturday Live, where me and a couple of the FPL gurus from the Hub did a live stream for the 3 p.m. games. It was great fun, and although it was FPL focused, it was still very relevant for Sky. We'll be doing our next live show next Saturday, February the 1st. Please join us at 10 to 3 and join in the chat. It was great fun and very interactive. And one final piece of news, I touched on it already. Next Sunday, the Overhaul is activated. And for our next week's podcast, we will be going live on YouTube video, picking our joint ultimate Overhaul team. So please feel free to join us, join in the discussion, and help us make decisions. I will post the link on Twitter and on the Hub website in the next week. It will very likely be around 8 p.m. next Sunday evening. In the meantime, we hope you have a great Sky week, and we bid you thank you and good night. Good night.